On today's show, it is part 2 of 2 with myself and Ben Pfeifer talking all things NBA draft in the midst of March Madness, and it's coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1935 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Wednesday into Thursday here in mid-March. As today's show is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, if you are a new customer at FanDuel, get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel. And the place to go is FanDuel.com to get started. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show to listen to part 1 of this episode. If you missed it, it should be in your same feed right now. I dropped it at the same time. This is actually going to be part 2 that you're about to hear right now. Part 1 is the best place to start this conversation. You can listen to it in reverse order if you want to, but probably better off going from part 1 to part 2. But it's basically just a full-on, free-flowing, hour and 10-minute chat with myself and Ben Pfeifer about the NBA draft in advance of March Madness. And again, I posted this on Wednesday so that it's up a little bit before the games get going on Thursday afternoon. And that's kind of all I have on this intro of the podcast. Again, part 1 is available right now on the same feed. And here we go with part 2 with myself and Ben. I want to ask you about some guards because one question I get a lot, especially because Kobe Buffkin is out of sight, out of mind. He's barely played for 2 years. Yeah, I know it's unfortunate. But, and look, maybe the Hawks still believe. I don't know. I said at the deadline.
Like they probably should unless, like if injuries are only concern and they took him 2 years ago. I probably think
I always know that. Yeah, I always know that like Quinn Snyder has always been a big Kobe Buffkin fan. He's not even hidden that. He's always liked Kobe Buffkin. But I say that the Hawks have obviously needed another ball handler, right?
Sure.
In part because Kobe hasn't been there. Dyson's done a lot of that this year, actually, and impressed me with how well he's done it. Now, we know this going back to him as a prospect. He was played a lot of point guard at the low levels, et cetera, et cetera. But I think there's still room in this backcourt for another guy. And there are a bunch of not small, but combo guard size players that could be interesting. I'm just going to throw them out there, and then you can talk about whoever you want to. I mentioned before, but Jeremiah Fears is out there. Jase Richardson's out there. Scrolling down the list a little bit. Those are probably the 2 biggest ones. Like a little bit lower level on most boards. You got Cam Jones. Like there are a bunch of this is a different archetype, but like you got Agor Denman, who's not small, but he is a point guard. And the way the Hawks probably don't need a point guard like that. But does anyone strike you as I know you're a Fears guy to some degree. I like Richardson, which is
I think Jase makes more sense for the Hawks. I also really like Phylon, who I'm crazy high on. I don't think consensus is.
It's weird. I mean, there was in the middle of the year, Phylon made an appearance in a bunch of like top 20s, and it kind of went away again. And by the way, if people don't know this, this is LeBaron Phylon from Alabama.
Yes,
Alabama. Obviously, they have Mark Sears, so Mark Sears is a much better college basketball player than Phylon is, but Phylon's a much better prospect than Mark Sears is. Just for that's the short translation. If you don't know
of these guys, I'd probably say Jase is the one who I'd want for the Hawks, just because I think he has the best. Like he's already a good off-ball player. He's been a good off-ball player his entire life. Phylon fits that as well, but I think Jase is probably a better shooting bet overall than Phylon, who I do like to shoot, but I think Jase is just like exceptionally good touch, has a longer track record of positive shooting. Richardson is someone who there are some people who are really high on him that have him top 5, which I don't personally, just because I think
that's high.
He's a bit smaller and he's not really a playmaker. Like he has pretty poor vision, in my opinion. Like he definitely can hit some passes, and his assist to turnover numbers are crazy because he doesn't make mistakes and he's not a risk taker, which is valuable. But I don't think he's a primary playmaker or anything. And he's not a crazy separator or anything, but he has a great handle, very flexible and elastic. I just think there's athletic and feel limitations that keep him from being a primary guy. But Hawks wouldn't need him to be a primary guy, right? That's not why they're drafting him. But this version of the Hawks, we presume. I mean,
there is the whole thing which we don't have to do now of if down the road, if this summer is a potential pivot point for Trae Young, contractually, all those things. If they don't have Trae, then they do need a primary suddenly. But in the world in which we currently live,
the calculus changes if that's the case. But for the moment, I think Richardson, just really decisive player, really good ball handler, great touch overall, can hit like basic passes against zones and stuff. Like he has a lot of high level skills that I think make him a very good like off ball second guard bet in the league. Where I don't know if he's like an all-star to me, maybe at his ceiling, but definitely like a top 50, like very valuable player if he ends up hitting, which I think is a guy like worth taking in the lottery in pretty much every draft. And he's not hopeless defensively either. Like he's small and his feet aren't perfect, but he has a couple like, every once in a while he'll make like a crazy block or have a nice rotation. So I think Richardson is a good fit. Phylon is also a good fit to me for a lot of the same reasons, where he's already playing this like connector role next to a high usage small point guards. Like there's that connection already. I think Phylon probably a little less safe on offense, but much more upside to me because he has real juice in terms of burst, and I think his change of direction and like change of pace and direction is among the best in the entire class, up there with your Dylan Harper in that skill just specifically, but has real limitations, right? It's a pretty poor score at the rim, and the shooting is not there yet, even though I do believe in the shooting. But another guy who's a really solid, like a really impressive pick and roll playmaker. I think he could be a really high level defender. He's just very weak at this point, and screens can be a huge issue. But like he's had some awesome moments, and he plays on a pretty piss poor Alabama defensive guard room as the best defensive guard on that team. So they ask him to do a lot on that end. And we make big plays, clutch plays in big moments, and like already I think is such a good like high field connective player with the upside to be more than that. So he would also be a player I really like that if the Hawks drafted, if they feel confident in his shooting or just abilities to do the things off the ball they need to.
Yeah, I do like that in general. And, I can already hear people comparing Bufkin to those kind of guys because, the theory with Bufkin was can play backup point guard and also play with Trey because he had enough size. There's an archetype there of a guy who has enough size to play with Trey and without Trey. And you don't have to have that player, but it does help. When you have a guy who's going to play 36 minutes at point guard per game and 40 plus in the playoffs, who is a pure point guard at 6'1", having that kind of versatility in the backcourt is helpful. And that was the idea with Bufkin. And
I think Phylon especially has like a much higher chance of being a real on-ball guy than Bufkin, in my opinion. Where Jase, I think, you can maybe make some similar kind of.
I think they are kind of. I think Richardson and Bufkin are not like the same player, but like
I can certainly
similar archetypally.
Can certainly see shades where Richard, similar guys like. Definitely good drive. I think Bufkin definitely had more athletic juice and was bigger. Jase is probably more skilled and a better shooter overall, but certainly similarities there. So I think I'm kind of talking myself into Phylon as my favorite option of these, but he's probably someone you might be able to get at 25 or 24.
I was going to say he might be around the Lakers pick
based on the rookie scale consensus where it hasn't been 30. So it's like if you can get him in the late first round, and then you want to take a different position, or you want to swing on two of these kind of second guard types. You really want to get one. You draft Richardson, you draft Phylon. One of them is probably going to be good.
This show is sponsored by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. And with Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with the top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, at Upwork, they make hiring simple and affordable. You can find the right talent with Upwork across the board if you ever need help with a marketing campaign. Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results across the board. Also, the hiring process is fast and easy. Posting a job is free and simple. Within a day, multiple qualified candidates will be there to choose from, and it's also cost-effective. It's starting instead of hiring full-time. Upwork helps you find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale the businesses effectively that you're looking to do so, and also with high-end efficiency. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That is Upwork.com, UPWORK, Upwork.com. That's Upwork.com to connect with the top talent and grow your business today. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and March Madness is here, and they're giving you a chance at FanDuel to get the chance to get on the action like never before. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and right now, if you're a new customer, you get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, and everything in between, including who's going to cut down the nets at the end. I got my eye on a few underdogs this season, of course, and to make it easy at FanDuel to actually back them with spreads and totals and player props. They have game props, future bets, live betting, same-game parlays, and much more. Beyond college hoops, they also have the NBA, of course, NHL. They have baseball, which is right up right now, of course, as well. Football, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, and much more. And with tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something happening and really something exciting to bet on at FanDuel. The app is really simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly with no waiting around for that cash. Again, if you're a new customer, you get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel, and the place to go is FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to get on college hoops action all tournament long. I was going to say, this is a good opportunity. I want to ask you this. And I kind of know from our previous conversations, but there's a debate that people are going to have for the next, what day, 3+ months about like best available versus fit. And I am someone who is best available unless the fit is impossible. It's kind of where I am always on this stuff. Yeah. Like there have been times in the recent past where I have gone into a draft and basically said, for the Hawks in particular, and said, all right, best available other than a small guard. Because I'm like,
sure.
At some point, like you can't, especially when you were drafting earlier in this rebuild and they had top 10 picks, it's like you can't take another small guard in the top 10. There have been times when I've said that. But other than that, like, or maybe you could say at times in the recent past when they had Capella and Okongwu locked in, probably not draft a set like a pure center because they had two guys. Now, I feel like this year for the Hawks, it's kind of best player available unless same thing, unless they can't play with Trey. It would be the only way I would not draft a guy. Does that make sense to you? Just in a vacuum?
To me, like the thing with fit is less about like roster construction, just because rosters change so much over years in the NBA, and especially they change in ways that people don't necessarily anticipate, like whether trades or regression or progression. But I do think there's something to like whether or not we have the ecosystem to develop a player who's raw or something, or, if he fits a timeline. I do think that's valid overall. But yeah, I mean, I think if you have a couple guys who I think are within the same tier, I think it's all right to, who fits our ecosystem best, who fits our scheme best. But overall, like if there's an overwhelmingly more talented player, like in the event of like a Derik Queen falling to the late lottery, it's like I will throw all better fit lower tier guys aside and take the guy who I think has real star ceiling. So
I'm a believer in the tier system as well. Like not everybody thinks about it in tiers. I do, and I think you do as well, where it's like, all right, I'm not going to jump a tier or drop a tier based on that, but if they're in the same tier, sure, tiebreakers, etc. And you might have preferences within the tiers, but that's kind of how I think about things. I just want to at least ask that question out loud. Because, they said for as much as they have a lot of interesting talent that kind of fits together, the Hawks are it's a pretty open board for them. Both in the range of, like, again, 13 to 25-ish. That's a lot of players in that range. Like it's only 12 spots, but that usually means what, 25 or 30 guys that go into like June thinking they might go in that range. That seems like a lot of guys, but it's not. So that's part of this too. Is there anybody that you are super high on versus everybody else that we've not talked about or that we have talked about? Like that's not not Cooper division, but like someone in the Hawks range that you're like, you know what? I like this guy a lot compared to, let's just say, the rookie scale board that's out there, for example. Or lower, by the way, or someone you don't like, which is fine.
Pylon is probably the main one. I think the main guys I would differ from are like the late, again, like the players either in like the 50s or not even on the consensus board, like Darion Williams or Jameer Watkins, who I think would be, or like Yaxel Lendeborg, even though I'm more on board with him. Oh, actually, no, easy.
Yaxel Lendeborg had this crazy game like last week where he had like 30.
One of the most absurd stat lines of all time. Honestly.
That was unbelievable. I just want to say that out loud. He's from UAB. Everybody. He had this. Look it up. It was like 30. It's like 30, 25, 4, 5, and no turnovers. Like this.
No, it was. I think it was 30, 20, 8 assists, no turnovers, 5 and 4. It was like what?
It was ungodly stuff.
I still need to watch that game. I'm very curious. curious to like actually watch that tape.
I will say I did not watch it. I just saw the stat line and I was like, that can't be right, and it was.
It's crazy.
So anyway,
but
that's
my answer for favorite Hawks guy that on the consensus board is out of that range, even though I've seen him high on some boards, is Alex Condon on Florida.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like him.
Who I think is my absolute favorite, like mid-late first round center bet in this class. He's just really damn good, and I would imagine like with more eyes on him, I think Florida's going to make a deep run. Like he is going to be really good in the tournament. One of the few guys who actually has like real size. Like he's not like Maluash or like Rocco Zikarsky size,
no,
but he is a legit 6'11", probably 7 feet with shoes, good wingspan, good standing reach. I think a perfect kind of like complementary center bet, where the one reason that Compton isn't like a high level prospect is because of his scoring. Like he's not a dynamic scorer in pretty much any way. He's like a fine spot up shooter, not the greatest finisher on account of some weak strength and like explosion, but one of the highest field players, especially among bigs, in my opinion, in the class. Like incredibly good connector, great short roll passer, great dribble handoff passer, great passer out of the post. Just like really, really good with the ball in his hands, can really dribble as well for a big man. And then his defense is great too. Like he's really mobile, can slide and rotate and cover grounds. And he's a pretty good shot blocker as well. Like not exceptional by any means, but his like positioning is good. He's smart, and he's also really damn physical, which I feel like, you know, a lot of these oceanic players come with a certain come with a certain edge to them.
I was not ready for that. That was good. That was good. I enjoyed that. Oceanic. No,
he's Australian. Like so that's unclear, but
yes,
and like he is a physical mother. He will hit people despite having no business to. Like in their matchup, I think in their matchup with Janai Broom, there were some plays. I'm just like, you have no business trying to back down or wall up Broom. And hey, sometimes it's not going to work, but I think that physicality, evidenced by great rebounding numbers, great free throw rate numbers, and you see it on tape. And I think it's very different than kind of disappointing for Onyeka. It's like someone who I thought could be like that in the league, but really hasn't been, especially on defense. And I do think the Hawks could benefit a lot from a big man who's just like has a really good blend of being like a big man who can do big man stuff. He can be physical, he can do the dirty work, but also has the skill to be like a modern guy who can fit in the motion offense and who can maybe space the floor a little bit. Like I think he's probably a similar level shooting bet to like a Danny Wolf, maybe a little worse actually, but still a guy who's like would not be even a little bit crazy to see him hitting spot ups. Like he shot, 30, 33%.
He takes like 2 a game or something like that. Like he's not like afraid to shoot.
He has a hilarious like low ass catapult release, but
that's all right. No, I think the Hawks are.
He's really good. I am a huge fan of his.
Yeah, I like him too. I think the Hawks are in the market for I don't mean this derisively, but for a backup center type, like a role player center who has more size than Okongwu, because I do think that the way he's played recently, Okongwu, they're probably going to go forward with him as their starting center. And then, but if you do that, which I'm okay with right now because he's been playing well, you do want to have some other options that are curveballs. Like for instance, they love Larry Nance, but Larry Nance is like an undersized older center. Yeah. Good player still, but like not the perfect complement for Okongwu, I don't think. And Capella is aging out, of course, and also just is really limited in what he can and can't do, etc. So I think
just can't really bake him into your long-term plans anymore.
Right, so. and they're not. I don't think. I mean, maybe if they get him back for cheap, they'll bring him back, but it won't be because like he won't be the only option if they do it.
Yeah.
And I love Don Barlow. Don Barlow is still a project. So
love Don Barlow, man.
Also
not a center, even if he.
Yeah, I mean he's playing center, but like he's honestly a classic 5 on offense, 4 on defense. Like and Moguet is the same. Moguet's playing the 4. He's not a center either. It's like he does.
I feel like they've played with the 5 in some lineups, right? Maybe
they've done it some. Like they
probably just out of necessity. Like
they don't think Mo is a center, and I think honestly the stuff that he does well is like secondary rim protection. Like he's not a anchor. But anyway,
I have one guy. He's not in the tournament, but if you can get Sorber in the mid-20s, that would be phenomenal, I think.
Yeah, and he's another center from Georgetown. Super interesting, like was awesome this year. Like was not a giant recruit either, like a good recruit, but not like a 5-star.
He was a guy who, like, guy. I think people who watch like AAU ball, like your Gribinovs and stuff, like this is an incredibly good player. I mean, even I loved him as a high school player. Like he was a phenomenal AAU player, but I did have translation worries, and he kind of quelled a lot of those. Like similarities to Condon and him just being like a really skilled, high feel, big. But I think he's a much better scorer than Condon. I'm a much more effective interior player, and probably not as good as like the physical big man stuff, but ultimately a much higher ceiling, I think, than
he's kind of in between where. Yeah, he's kind of in between where I think his offense is pretty interesting and defense is like less exciting with Sorber, but he's also not like a zero on defense either. Like
I think he's a perfectly like passable NBA center defender, which
potential starting center. And if you can get him in the 20s, like I would be all about that. I probably wouldn't take him at 13 if I was the Hawks or 14 or whatever. But I think if
you can. Yeah, I mean, he has issues like defending in the post and like being overly reactive, but also, like his mobility is great, I think. And even if the footwork is inconsistent, his awareness and play recognition are phenomenal. Like he has a lot of good things about him defensively, even if he's not going to be a star on that end, which I think we probably both agree on.
Today's show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings time stuck up on us again. I know that feels the same way to me. If you're feeling that lost hour of sleep still, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means that there's actually more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little bit of a boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late to watch the NCAA Tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or trying to keep up with your honestly just your normal busyness, 5 Hour Energy gives you that extra quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. I've been staying up late for a long time, watching all the basketball stuff, tournament action, Hawks, of course, NBA. 5 Hour Energy helps me keep up the next day each and every time. They have extra daylight and extra activities as well. With longer days, I love getting outside for hiking or walking or running or whatever. And they have the Tropical Burst flavor, which is my go-to for a quick boost across the board. And it's really convenient on the go. Whether I'm at a game or I'm traveling, 5 Hour Energy, it's easy to grab. It keeps me actually feeling refreshed always. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors. That's 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can actually even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack and have it delivered directly to your door as well. If you need one now or in the future, grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store as well. They are everywhere across the board. Stock up today and stay energized. And the place to go one more time here is 5hourenergy.com. I have one more guy I was going to ask you about that I forgot to earlier, because he's been in the news a lot lately because he's playing incredibly well, and so is his team, and that's Nique Clifford from Colorado State. He's old, fifth-year guy in college, but is having this crazy year, like averaging like 20 and 9 rebounds as a
He's
guard.
One of my favorite olds, I must say.
Yeah, I like him a lot too, but also I try to fight myself on this where it's like, all right, this guy's 23. He kind of wasn't this until this year, and I think he's going to be a role player in the NBA. But I like role players. I'm a sucker for a role player, Ben. Big fan of a role player. What's he going to be?
I love Nique. I thought he was a first-round pick last year if he came out. Like I thought he would very, very easily be a first-round pick, like a top 25 guy on my board if he ended up coming out last year. And I was really happy to see him come back and play awesome ball because I do think he played at the level I expected to. He is a role player, but something I say all the time is like, if you're projecting a guy to be an NBA role player, especially for older players, they need to be a star initiator, high usage guy at the college level. With some exceptions, right? It's like if you're a specialist in college, I don't think you're going to be able to be a specialist in the NBA. Whereas Nique is, Colorado State's primary initiator, right? Like he is their main lead offensive guy. And for good reason. Like he's made huge strides as a shooter. He's very efficient as like a lead creator, really manipulative passer. And I think his defense has slipped a little this year, but like we see this all the time with these like defensive wings who are great defenders early in their career and then take on a higher usage role later in their career. Like this always happens. And I think especially on the ball, Nique is so mobile, really great, like detaching his hips from his his upper body and like pivoting and turning with drivers and changing directions and stuff. And then I think like has all of the tools to be a good complementary offensive wing. Like I think he's going to shoot. He's a great passer. He can dribble. Like he has pretty much everything you want. Like he's one of those players. Like even if he's old, like I like if the right team was like I want to take Nique Clifford in the late lottery, I wouldn't so disagree with that. Like I won't have him as a lottery guy. I mean, I think I currently have him as like a top 20 guy on my board. Like I view him as a very, very good player and probably the second best returning prospect, like non-freshman outside of Murray Boyles. It's not a crazy, most of the main guys are freshmen, but he is really, really good. And I like don't think you can be like, I mean, I don't think I've seen anyone with him like top 10 or anything, but like I've seen people with him like late lottery, early mid-teens, and I can totally get down with that. Honestly, I think if the Hawks have a chance to take him in the 20s, especially,
I was gonna say like
you sprint the card. You sprint the card up. Honestly, I think within that.
Yeah, I was there with like, all right, I like this in the 20s with the Lakers pick, and I just was dummy checking because you're better at this than I am. But no, I really like him, and I just know that I'm a sucker for this kind of player, but also. There's nothing wrong. Yeah, he's old. He's 23. He'll be 24 later this year, whatever it is. Nothing wrong with that in the 20s if you know what you're doing. Like you're not drafting him for 10 years from now.
I think he's like a very solid bet to be like a good role player with like good starter upside on his first contract. Like it's a different thing from a guy who you're drafting to be a foundational piece, whether that's as a primary or a complementary guy. But like,
yep.
I don't know, like he'll be 27, 28 on his second contract. Like that's still well within like the range where you can pay a player again and have him still be useful for you, assuming things go well. So
nothing wrong with that. And also maybe it's never this clean. So I don't mean to say that it's this obvious, but if you were to take a bigger swing with let's just say the Hawks have end up with both picks, right? If you take a bit of a swing with the Kings pick, and you want to be like, you know what, we actually need somebody who can help us right away or close to right away. Clifford would be like, I mean, of the guys, maybe I'm wrong about this. Of the guys who I'm looking at in
Phylon and Nique Clifford.
Well, I'm just thinking like of the guys in this range. Look, I do not draft this way. It would not recommend drafting this way. But if all that mattered to you was this guy could play for me right now, yeah, he's probably number one on the list for me. All these guys in this range.
It's like him and Cam Jones to me are the two that it's like you put them on an NBA floor today. It's like
And they're older guys, and I get that they're older.
There are teams that would like Cam Jones on their roster today. Like, and I think the same is true with Nique for sure. There's a couple other players I feel that way about, but not as strongly as those two for sure. I think. Yeah,
I mean, I think Alex Kerribeck could play in the league right now. Yeah, as like a 10th man for somebody, he could just be on the court and would not embarrass himself. There are players like that. And look, my baseline, I think one of my lines is that rookies are bad because most of them are. But there are certain guys that could play for you. It doesn't mean they're going to be awesome right away.
Caravan could for sure play for you right away. Absolutely. I think Jameer Watkins out of Florida State could play for you right away. He's another one that really fits the heuristic of like has scaled up and is Florida's on-ball primary creator, but won't be that in the league. But I think that's a good thing ultimately for his projection. Miles Bird, who I think I don't know if we already did the preface where he's playing in the first.
I'll preface it now. Game. Yeah, we're recording this Monday, and the only guy that we were going to talk about that is going to play between when I record this and when I post this is Miles Bird. So San Diego State, Miles Bird. Please, hopefully they win the game, but we'll just bring that up now. I think he's an interesting player. People might have already seen him play on Tuesday, so my apologies. There's only one guy. But, a guy that's on my list as a potential, late first rounder.
Him versus Nique is pretty interesting to me. I think Nique is a good bit better. He's also about 3 years older. Bird is like one of the better off-ball defensive wings to come out in quite some time, and he's like a very legitimately talented playmaker who I think is probably a good enough shooting bet, but definitely a worse offensive player than Clifford. So I probably don't. I would probably prefer Clifford a little bit to Bird, but they're in the same range where it's like depending on what you're looking for. If you want to go with someone more long term, I think Bird is a perfectly fine option. Yeah, he's gonna play North Carolina. I mean, I guess Drake Powell and Ian Jackson, like
Yeah, they're not like zero prospects.
I don't know if those guys even come out this year, though.
Yeah, agreed. All right, I'm gonna let you go in a second, but since we're looking at the tournament, do you have and I'm sure you've looked at the bracket already, but if not, you can pull it up. Is there a game that you are like, that's the game, I'm clearing the schedule, first round game, I'm watching this? And then also looking ahead a little bit, which is always a little bit uncertainty, is there a game that you hope we see in a few days?
I want to at least mention, because I think we kind of glossed over Jeremiah Fears. Probably not a Hawks guy.
That's probably why I glossed over. But yeah, go ahead. He's, by the way, a very, very popular player right now. He's been flashing quite a bit recently, so that's interesting to me.
Yeah, he recently had a ridiculous game against Kentucky in the SEC tournament where he almost single-handedly dragged them to a win.
He also beat Michigan on a crazy play earlier in the season, which I have not forgotten.
Yep, he's just like, again, probably not a Hawks guy because he is a lead guard bet, but I think one of the most talented players in the entire draft. I mean, you're only I think serious knocks against him are that he is a small guard with interior scoring concerns and he's not a perfect decision maker. But another one of these 18-year-olds who an SEC team is you're going to run our offense and you're going to be the highest usage freshman in the country and we're going to see what happens. And it's mostly gone well outside of a slump during the beginning of conference play, just ridiculous combination of burst and skill and physicality and touch. He's a guy who I think if you're a team maybe Brooklyn, Miami, Chicago, where it's you're in the market for a real lead guard of the future, he's outside of Dylan Harper, who I think Dylan Harper is phenomenal. He's probably the first guy I'm looking to. So he's another one where it's I like what you said, anyone but small guards, or if he fell to 12, it would be hard to stomach passing on him just because of the talent level. But also, it's I would also get it because I don't know if see, this is where it's not as much about roster fit as I don't know if the Hawks would be the best ecosystem for him to reach his ceiling and develop in the way that he needs to get the reps, to have the teammates around him. Or obviously I think Trey has been a lot more willing to play off the ball this year. This is his best off-ball season ever, but he's never going to be a guy who's hand over the keys to someone else, right? So
yeah, and there is an Oklahoma connection there. Trey and Fears are both for Fears, I wouldn't necessarily want that.
Quite a few similarities there. And I think he might be the highest usage freshman guard since Trey, which is funny.
It's up there. No, he's the kind of guy where I am maybe lower on him than you, but I do see it. And yeah, there's a certain point where you just draft the talent, or maybe you trade the guy.
Not for the Hawks, though. I don't think so.
Yeah, I just don't think the Hawks would be the team for him, which is probably why we've been talking about him before. But yeah, I think he's interesting for sure.
Back to tournament matchups. Your guy, Danny Wolf against UC San Diego. That's one that I'm looking at. Because I mean, I think if you've read any of the blurbs, or I've written about this for work of just about matchups to watch, it's UC San Diego are one of the best teams in the country at forcing turnovers and defending the paint, and Michigan gets all their points in the paint. They turn the ball over a shitload.
They turn the ball over a lot.
Danny Wolf,
it's tough.
He has just absurd turnover numbers, which I think is certainly a concern, right, for prospect projections. So that's going to be a really interesting one to watch. How does he handle UCSD's pressure? In terms of bigger ones, though, Derik Queen versus Florida potential in the Sweet 16 would be cinema. Please, 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 I want that. It's going to be a tough path to get there. I'm very confident Florida is going to get there. I mean, in the second round, we could get Florida versus Oklahoma for Fears, but that's an SEC matchup.
Which is,
and in the second,
aren't they all?
In the second round, we could get Maryland versus Colorado State. We could get Nique versus Derik Queen, which would be awesome. But
well, and then you get Duke versus Baylor is the one everyone's BJ against Duke in the second round would be something crazy.
That's a really good one as well.
May not get it, but that might be there.
Yeah, might not. I mean, we just need Baylor to beat Mississippi State for it. And then even Grand Canyon is not a pushover by any means. For Maryland in the first round, so they're gonna have to give that. But yeah, that Maryland Colorado State matchup would be an absolute dream for prospect scouting. Illinois Kentucky is another second round matchup that I really like for prospect scouting, where Yakuchonis and Will Riley against a really good Kentucky team who's not the best defensive team in the world, but they will be tested on offense. Yakuchonis, we haven't really talked about much, like has slipped a bit recently because of his turnover and like driving issues at times, but still a guy who I'm pretty high on, and I think he's going to have a chance to see some different looks and some higher level guys as well. That's one that I have circled as a potential matchup to watch as well. And then I think like all of that, like those top ones, like Auburn, Creighton, Auburn, Michigan, like Janai Broom versus Danny Wolf versus Ryan Kalkbrenner. Like we have a potential to get a lot of really good, big man prospect matchups. And then another one that I'm looking at is potentially Iowa State and Michigan State in the Sweet 16, where we get Jase Richardson versus a really, really good Iowa State team with a ton of great defensive players in the backcourt. It won't be with Keyshawn Gilbert, which is a big bummer. But Tamin Lipsey, great defender. Curtis Jones is a pretty good perimeter defender as well. Would just be another really good test for Richardson overall. Like he's going to have a gauntlet of guards to go up against because he has either Marquette or New Mexico in the second round, which is Cam Jones or Donovan Dent, assuming they can be Bryant, which I think they should. And then it'll be Iowa State or, SDSU, Ole Miss, UNC. But I think Iowa State feels pretty good to make it that far. I mean, it's the tournament. But, And then I guess, like, curious to see Demon against anyone because like he's kind of fallen out of the rotation late in the season for BYU. He's certainly not like the level of player some people wanted him to be early in the season, but I think him against any high level defense, like if we could get, or just high level team like him against Wisconsin in the second round would be really cool. If we could get a BYU Alabama game, that would be really cool. Any other good prospect matchups? I mean, honestly, just looking at like the first round matchup versus UConn Oklahoma is really interesting with McNeeley and Kerrigan against Fears, like two very
that's
different
one of the
teams.
better ones for sure.
One of my shout out to actually underrated prospect matchup that I will be crapping my pants for is Mizzou versus Drake.
As a Missouri guy that you are,
as a Missouri guy, I couldn't be more bummed that I've been I've been pumping up Drake all year. They're one of my favorite teams. I love Bennett Sturts, who's their lead guard, who I think is a legit NBA guy.
He can play, yeah.
And now I'm like, well, shit, we're a 6 seed, which is higher than I thought. But we played Drake in the first round. Like, even if to be fair, I think the path after Drake, if we can win, is pretty workable. Texas Tech is good, but they're banged up. Like Darion Williams, the guy who I mentioned, I really like as a prospect. I believe he's injured. I'm not sure if he's going to play in the first couple games. Like, please give me Kansas or Arkansas in the Sweet 16. Please, please, please. That would be wonderful. Like I would be so happy to see either of those teams. St. John's is scary though.
Yeah.
St. John's is
interesting because it's Rick Pitino, who's incredible, and also their defense is just monstrous. Like they have like no prospects.
RJ Luis, man, I think RJ Luis is a guy.
He's a bucket for sure.
He's like a late. I think Luis is a perfect like mid-late second UDFA flyer. But quickly wanted to say on Mizzou, Anthony Robinson, sophomore guard. I think he's like a top 20 guy. Very much like a draft Twittery type player who may or may not actually, I would guess probably doesn't declare this year because he's going to have a great chance to boost his stock next year. But like one of the coolest, like wackiest combination of skills, like 80 free throw rate, 5% steal rate, like was phenomenal defender, crazy passer, like really efficient, low volume shooter, someone who's been critical for us, for Mizzou throughout the year. And man, I'm very nervous for Mizzou Drake as a Mizzou alum who has vested interest in us winning that game. But as a neutral fan of just college basketball or prospect, that's one that I think you're not going to want to miss. Like two high-level guards who are probably going to match up with each other, I would guess, at least for parts of the game. I don't know if they're going to have Sturts defend Robinson, but I think Robinson's certainly going to match up with Sturts. He's their best perimeter defender. So,
yeah. No, that's on my radar too as a sicko. So I'm glad you brought it up. No, I mean, it's that time of year. I love college basketball. I know I'm not. I never say it's as good as the NBA because it's not. It's almost a different sport. But I love college basketball. I love the NBA. And I love the draft. So this is like my perfect. This is like this
right.
Is it.
I mean, like for me, it's the kind of thing where it's like the stuff that makes me dislike college basketball during the regular season makes it great during March Madness.
Yeah,
or it's kind
I
of
get
like
it.
It's kind of like baseball for me. It's like I hate regular season baseball, but like this kind of like boredom and shittiness turns into tension and drama when the games are single limb and like you get the playoffs. So
I totally get it. The quality is not the same, but also my brother is a high school basketball coach in Georgia, and when I go to their games, it makes college look even better. You know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, college games are just great compared to this, and then you watch
Georgia high school basketball is pretty good.
No, it is, and but it's just funny. Coaches, it's not. He does not have 5 stars on his roster. Shouts to them. But no, it's like from day to day. It's like, all right, I'll go to one of his games, and then the next time I'll be at State Farm Arena, and I'm like, this is not the same sport. I mean, it's not the same sport. Yeah. But anyway, I feel that way about college too. But we will all have fun, and I appreciate you coming in.
Hopefully, we get a Mizzou Michigan Final Four matchup.
I would be all about that. Also, I'm going to cover the South Regional because it's in Atlanta, and Michigan's in the South Regional. So maybe Michigan will somehow win 2 games and make it there because that'd be nice for me.
I don't think there's anything that close to I don't think there's one in Anaheim or anything this year. I know they've been in Anaheim.
Hold on, I can probably find it for you. Anyway, it's just there's a. The only reason I usually travel for a regional for work purposes, but this year it's like, there's one in Atlanta. I don't have to go
San Francisco. It's not going to happen. But anyways,
no, that's not down the street from you. So
no,
and then I'll be at the Final Four. So maybe I hope we get at least some
Final Four in San Antonio.
San Antonio. There's been some years recently where it's been like kind of not the greatest prospect situation. Hopefully, we get a couple prospects. If Duke makes it, that'd just be by itself. But
so my in the initial bracket I made, I have Michigan State, Florida, Duke, Kentucky, which would be an excellent prospect final.
That is a good prospect Final Four. I mean, as long as you get at least like if Duke makes it, that's just 3 or 4 guys on its own. Bam's got guys. They're a high
Florida's
seed.
Guys, Michigan
Florida's
State,
got guys.
Yeah.
Like there are some top seeds that have guys.
Houston has guys you can talk yourself into. Auburn, like there's just
as long as someone makes it that's supposed to make it, we should be in good shape. Ben, you're all over the place on the internet. So where can people find all of your content? And again, I will respectfully ask you to come back later in the process.
As you know, I'm always around. This is always a highlight of my twice a year. But I mean, just follow me on Twitter, BJPF_, where I post all my writing and my video stuff for Sportskeeda, sportscasting, occasional stuff at other places. Those are my 2 main outlets where I'm going to be writing lots of NBA, college basketball. I'm sure I'll have lots of March Madness. I did a TV hit today, which was cool.
Nice. Look at you.
Shout out Blake Murphy.
Toronto.
Yeah, I don't know if you know Blake, but I love Blake.
I love Blake. No, I love Blake. He's the best.
I didn't know it was going to be a TV hit until it happened. Like,
so you were on?
I thought it was a radio hit. I'm
great.
pretty sure Blake was like, "Do you want to do a draft radio hit for me?" And I'm like, "Of course." And then I come on, and they're like, "Hey, can you like fix your camera?" And I'm like, "Oh shit!" I like woke up 5 minutes earlier, and now I'm talking to Blake and Matt Bonner with like red beating eyes, but.
Hey, it's all part of the fun this time of year.
Yeah, Twitter, my YouTube channel is just my name.
YouTube, follow your YouTube as well. I would just put it all out there. People should be checking it out. If they made it this far on the podcast, they're probably a sicko, and they should be following all your stuff. So that's just what it is. As for everybody else, please subscribe to this podcast. I'm not going to have a show again until Saturday because of the tournament, and the Hawks don't play until Saturday. So it's just a weird situation. They have 3 days off. I said that right before I brought you in, but it's a weird situation. The Hawks have a back-to-back Saturday and Sunday. March Madness watching, writing, etc. It's a dead time for the Hawks. Weirdly, they don't play at all till Saturday. So anyway, stay tuned for that. Subscribe to the podcast. Check out all of Ben's work. Appreciate you coming on, man. As for everybody else, we'll see you all next time.